Hey everyone, my name is Nick and welcome back to the channel, and welcome fellow aspiring sorcerers, exalted demon princes and those that are looking to find a way of beating the beloved Thousand Suns. So in this video we're going to go in depth and look at the brand new feature for the Thousand Suns in this codex, and that's Kabbalistic rituals. This is a way of generating a pool of points that you can spend on 9 special abilities which can't be blocked by your opponent. So very different to abilities that shut down stratagems or shut down psychic powers with deniable abilities and so on. This is a way of giving us a little bit extra power for the sake of making sure that we don't soup our army. So everything has to be a Thousand Suns model, and this is the little bit of benefit that we get by generating these Kabbalistic points to spend on some fancy rituals. There are 9 to get through, so let's get straight into it. So how do we generate our Cabal points then? Now, I did this in the teaser because Games Workshop's Warhammer community page gave us the information on this, and that is you generate Cabal points based on your sorcerers and their rank. So Magnus the Red generates us 4 points, Ahriman, Exalteds and Demon Princes 3, Sorcerers in Terminator Armour and the Infernal Master 2, and everybody else 1. So a typical balanced Thousand Suns army then is going to have somewhere between 16 and 20 Cabal points. Now, unlike infernal pacts or psychic powers, there is no way to stop these rituals going off except by killing the models that generate the Cabal points. So this is an unstoppable set of benefits that we get by purely Thousand Suns army. So this is your benefit in kind, as you were, for not souping your army. So the number of rules that we need to follow in order to be able to use Kabbalistic rituals, and that's what's on the screen now. So you must be a Cabal of Sorcerers army. That means it prevents souping. So all of your army must be a Thousand Suns keyword united detachment and army itself. You generate your Cabal points pool at the start of your psychic phase, and models must be on the battlefield to generate points. So they can't be in the webway, they can't be in a rhino, they can't be doing anything else that it doesn't involve them actually being permitted on the battlefield. So that's the only way you generate those points. So you tot up how many of those sorcerers that you've got on the field, and that is your Cabal pool of points at the start of the psychic phase. Any unspent points are completely lost. So if you've got 19 Cabal points, for example, and you spend that on 2 8 Cabal point rituals, you're going to lose that 1 remaining point. Each ritual can only be used once per turn, so yeah, you can't use Warp Sight twice, for example, and each unit can only benefit from 1 ritual per turn, so you can't stack all of the rituals onto a single unit to make it an Uber unit. And each unit that is the target of a Kabbalistic ritual must have the Kabbalistic ritual on its data slate ability list. And there are a few units that don't have the Kabbalistic ritual ability, so Cultists, for example, Zangors, Hellbrutes, Zangor Enlightened, albeit the Zangor Shaman does have Kabbalistic rituals, but then he is a Psyker. And then all of our vehicles and our spawn also do not have the Kabbalistic ritual ability, nor do Mutalith Vortex Beasts as well. And only until we get to the very last page of our data slates, we see Magnus the Red also has Kabbalistic rituals, so can be a target of these abilities. So what are they then? Well, 9 is the magic number, so we have 9 Kabbalistic rituals, which makes total sense. Imbued Manifestation, Malevolent Charge, Kindred Sorcerers, Warp Sight, Echoes from the Warp, Pact from Beyond, Kabalistic Focus, Psychic Melstrom, and Wrath of the Immaterium. And you can see on the screen there, the numbers next to them indicate the number of Kabbalistic points that you have to spend out of your pool of dice in order to activate that ritual. You can see some there are very, very cheap. So Warp Sight, for example, is only going to cost you 3 points, whereas Wrath of the Immaterium, it's going to cost you a whopping 9. Obviously, the more powerful they're going to be, the more points you're going to have to burn to use them. First up is Imbued Manifestation for 4 Cabal points. When a psychic power is cast, you add 6 to the effective range of that power. Nice and simple, just extends the range, almost like the old ability that we had within our codex that gave us that 6-inch range across the board. We now have to spend a ritual to extend that particular unit that you're going to cast that ritual on. A typical target for this might be your super mortal wound outputting Exalted Sorcerer, for example. One that can take multiple mortal wound output damage spells, and you want to buff the range on all of those from Some of them are going to be 12 or 18 inches. You want to extend that range to get them into more powerful positions. This is the kind of ritual you're going to cast or apply to that particular Exalted Sorcerer and buff their mega power output of mortal wounds. The good news is you don't spend this before you spend the points on the ritual, so you have to make sure that your psychic test is already passed, and then you can choose to add 6 inches to the range. So once it's already successfully manifested, then you spend your points. You're not already pre-burning points in the vain hope that your psychic test is passed, so that is definitely a positive. Again, once the psychic power is successful, we get Malevolent Charge. Again, for a cheap 4 Cabal points. If that power, so a Witchfire power for example, inflicts any mortal wounds on the opponent, you can add D3 more mortal wounds for 4 Cabal points. And again, as I mentioned at the start of this video, these can't be blocked except by killing the Cabal point generators, and this only is 4 Cabal points. So if you're casting things like Doombolt for 3 mortal wounds, just add D3 more for 4 Cabal points. That's just super good. So you're getting 4 mortal wounds guaranteed, potentially 6. That's character killing. We then go up a step to 5 Cabal points for Kindred Sorcerers. When a psychic power, after taking the test, you add 1 to the result. So when you take that test, you can then see what the result is, and then you can choose to spend 5 Cabal points to increase that test result by 1. So if, for example, you're casting Smite, and you've already gone through a couple of the easy ones where you're casting on a 4, 5 or a 6 for example, and you desperately need to cast that other one and your dice come up 1 short, 5 Cabal points, spin that result, add 1, and you cast that extra ability. Equally, if you're already at sort of casting of a 10 and you add 1 to the result, you're going to get the Super Smite ability and you're going to be inflicting D6 mortal wound potential just by adding those 5 Cabal point spends. The only time you don't want to be really using this is when you need an unmodified result. There's a couple of abilities that require unmodified dice rolls on your psychic test to get the benefit from them, so this is where you wouldn't use that. But on the whole, this can spin a bad situation into a very good one. Next up is the cheapest one of the lot, and that's Warp Sight for 3 Cabal points. Now, this is a nice little trickery, synergy-based ability. So when a psychic power is cast, use any psyker for the visibility check. So quite often you're going to need line of sight or visibility to the opponent and then within range of your casting psyker. Now what we're going to be able to do here is still need to be in range of that original psychic caster, but if you have line of sight from another unit that has another psyker in it, which most of our units do, let's be honest, especially like Rubric squads, or you've deep struck in some Scarab Occult Terminators, they're going to have that ability to see your target, and you can keep this particular psyker hidden away in cover or behind terrain, whatever. Just needs his power to be in range. So a little sneaky one if you're trying to pick out particular units and you don't want to expose that psyker into a line of sight situation. Next up is a cheap way of burning 4 Cabal points with Echoes from the Warp. That means a psychic unit can perform a psychic action called Echoes from the Warp with a warp charge of 3. If you are successful, you gain a command point. Nice and simple. Next up is one of the biggies, Pact from Beyond. You're going to see this a lot, and if you are an opponent of a Thousand Suns player, expect to see this being used. 7 Cabal points, so we are getting into the higher spend of our Cabal pool, and this means that a psychic test is auto-passed on the minimum value to cast. No roll is therefore required. Where we're going to see this being used is quite tricky. This is where some of the finesse comes in, and being specific in the order that you do things within the Thousand Suns army. There are a number of abilities and stratagems and so on, and psychic powers that require a roll of a 9+, for example, or even a Super Smite where you need an 11+ on your dice rolls. If you cast enough smites or enough powers that you're going to require a 9+ to cast the next smite, for example, you can then activate this Kabbalistic ritual and you will auto cast on that value of a 9. This is where we're going to see a lot of combinations between this and some psychic powers. So for example, there's a stratagem called Warped Regeneration for 1 command point that we use in the psychic phase after manifesting a psychic power with an unmodified psychic test of 9 or more. Now we can auto do that with this Kabbalistic ritual. That gives us some D3 lost wounds back to that model. or if it's been destroyed, you can return one of those models to the battlefield with all wounds remaining. That's one example of where this is going to come into play. The second place you're going to see this come into play, and I will go into more detail on this specifically in a later video, is within the Cult of Time for the Warlord trait Immaterial Echo. Again, if this Warlord manifests a psychic power with a psychic test result of 9+, the Warlord can attempt to manifest an additional power, and that additional power cannot be denied. So this is where you're going to see this kind of trickery and this kind of combination really start to work. So we've got a ritual that gives us an auto pass on a minimum value. If we ensure that we get to that minimum value, especially in and around Smite, which has that incremental value, we can now bring back models with a stratagem without having to worry about it, or we can then start casting undeniable powers without, again, having to roll off for it. So this is where you're going to see these tricky combinations, and that is from a Warlord trait. So lots of interaction between ritual, stratagems, and Warlord traits here. Now, if you're not in the Cult of Time with that undeniable second power, you can do this with Cabal points. So Kabalistic Focus is an expensive one, 8 Cabal points. After your psychic test is passed, spend 8 Cabal points, and that cannot be denied. So there's a lot, again, that can be really quite handy for this. So yeah, Gaze of Hate and stuff like that, blocking invulnerable saves, or something where your opponent is going to guaranteed to try and block a particular power. This is going to be the time to pull out your 8 Cabal points and spend it on the Kabalistic Focus and then prevent that denial. Very crutch kind of ability for me. Moving on then, more Cabal points here with Psychic Maelstrom. So you can attempt to cast the same Witchfire power that's already been attempted during the same psychic phase. Now normally you can only cast Smite multiple times, but this is going to allow us to cast a second Witchfire power, so one that causes mortal wounds, even if that unit doesn't know the power. Now we've got a lot of powers to go around, we've got a lot of Psykers to go around, but double Zinch's Firestorm, double Doom Bolts, stuff that's going to put out those damaging powers for 8 Cabal points, again, can't be stopped. I mean, the power can be denied, but you can't stop another unit casting a second Doom Bolt, for example. And finally then, Wrath of the Immaterium, 9 Cabal points. It is the most expensive ritual we have, and quite simply, after taking your psychic test, add 2 to the result. So very similar to Kindred Sorcerers then, which was 5 Cabal points to increase the result by 1. This is 9 Cabal points to increase the result by 2. Probably going to be used in a similar kind of circumstance for that Kindred Sorcerers. If you're desperate for that next Smite to go off, or you want to try and get a Super Smite, 9 Cabal points, it is expensive to use. There are a lot of other abilities in the list that might take a preference over this, but it's all going to come down to, you know, the dice. That's what happens in this game. So yeah, there's going to be a few options where this will come up, but I suspect many of the other places is where you're going to be spending the points, unless you really do choke those dice rolls. So there we go then, folks, and that is the Kabbalistic rituals covered. Now, as you can see through some of the examples or some of the commentary that I gave through each of those, this is where the finesse and the synergy begins to really come to life within the Thousand Sons. Combined with stratagems, combined with warlord traits, combined with psychic powers, Kabbalistic rituals begin to gel and begin to mesh some of these features within the Thousand Sons army. There's some great combos beginning to take shape as we've gone through some of these videos so far, and there's plenty more to come. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below what you think of the rituals. What are you going to be your go-tos? How many points do you think your bear army is going to actually be able to generate? Icons of Flame, I think, are going to be finally used within the Rubric Marine selection. That gives an extra Cabal point. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it informative. If you did, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I shall see you all on the next video.